Okay, we are going to get started then. So again, I'm making Minesweeper. We need to create two nested arrays. One is the field, one is the mask. And then I want to get a way to represent it on the screen. So we're going to start with that. And then we'll start working on we'll work on the graphics first, and then we'll work on the gameplay. So I'm going to go to REPL, and I'm going to create a new HTML, CSS, JavaScript thing. This is this 04? Minesweeper. I'm going to call this -1. The Minesweeper walkthrough. I've already practiced making one, so I think I already have an REO4 Minesweeper project. So I'm going to make this one a slightly different name, but you can call it whatever you'd like. And now we're going to make Minesweeper. Okay, once again, we have some HTML in our index.html file. If I click run, beautiful white blank page. There's no styles set. One thing that you can do to set the styles, just type body, and then in curly brackets, you can set attributes like the background, and you have to end your line with a semicolon. But this is the way it goes with CSS. You just grab an element. In this case, there's something called the body right here. That's the whole page pretty much. And you can set a background. Let's see. Alright, so one thing I should mention is that lately I've been having a lot of problems with REPL. I don't know what to do about that. I know they're making a lot of changes on their end. They're introducing new features. They've just released a curriculum thing which I've not looked into. But it doesn't work anymore for me. Like, I go home, it doesn't work. I come to school, it doesn't work. So if it works for you, that's great. I am going to switch to a different program. If you are following along, please just follow along by going to the script. Ignore what I'm doing here and just go straight to the script. It looks like I have no connection to the server here. And just type into the script. This should be blank, and then just start typing in the script. I'm going to do it in a slightly different way. Okay, I just paused the video, and I set myself up to be able to do this without REPL, which is still not really working. So if you can work at REPL, please do. Just use the script.js file and type in there. I am just running it off of a little file I made on my local computer. And I'm going to use this text editor called Atom, which is on the desktop computers at school. Otherwise, you can go to atom.io if you'd like to download Atom. A lot of people use Microsoft Visual Studio Code. That's an alternative. It's very nice. But anyway, I've created the same thing that a REPL has, which is you have an index file with your HTML, and then there's a script file, and I'm in the script file. So what you type in your script file should be what I'm typing here, and it should work the same. The only difference is I don't have a run button. I pretty much have to save my changes. Like if I type something, I'll get a little blue dot up here, which shows that I have unsaved changes, and I have to press Control S to save my changes, and then I go over to my browser and I press F5 to refresh, and then I can see my changes. Slightly different workflow, but it should work the same. You can just type in your script file and press run, and it should be the same as what I'm doing. Okay, so we want to get started, so I'm going to create an array. So what I want to do, I'm going to call this a field, and I want the field to be something like that's 6, maybe too many, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay. And then I'm going to copy and paste that 6 times. Gotta unindent a little bit. Now this is a field, it's arrays within arrays, kind of like I described. Now the last one doesn't need a comma, but I don't think it's a problem if you have a comma on the last item. It kind of fixes it for you. But this is what we want to make for our field. Now this is going to make a 6x6 grid. So this is the idea. This is what the data structure is going to look like. It's going to be basically a grid. But I want the player to be able to choose how many, 6x6 or a 3x3 or a 10x10. I want the player to be able to choose their own size of board, I guess, for longer games, for more difficult games. So I don't want to just type this out like I just did. I want a program that will ask for a number and then create something just like this based on what the user enters for the number, for the dimensions, for the size of the grid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say let dims equal prompt, and we'll say choose a grid size. N for a n by n grid between 3 and I think I went with 12 because the way I'd made it in my original run through, it got just a little too small once I got beyond 12. We can change it later so that it can take up more space, but right now I'm just going to do it like this. Okay, so now what happens once the player chooses a number? They respond to this. Well, then whatever they type in will get saved in the dimensions. Now, if they type a number, they could type cat, and that would get stored in our variable. We need them to type a number, and we need to make sure. So we need to take what the input, and we need to check it. If it is not a number, and if it's not within the correct range, we need to ask them again to pick a different number. So I don't know why I called it this in my example, but anyway, so I'm going to say we're going to set the let's say board size, or I'm going to call this grid choice. I don't know. So we'll call this grid choice, and then we will say while. So the player will make a choice. Then we'll say while grid choice is less than 3 or grid choice is greater than 12, then we'll do something. And we will basically say, actually, I'm going to change this. I'm going to cut this because I want to put it inside. So I'm going to press Control X, and I'm going to have it start as the number 0. And then in here, I'm going to say grid choice equals, and I'm going to paste that. So what does this do? It basically, actually, you know what? Well, let me explain this, then I'll add that. Okay, so the game starts. This isn't going to be here. I just put that as an example, so kind of ignore that. I'm going to comment it out, so I'm going to press /* and // and now that is turned into a multi-line comment, so this will not get run as code. So here the player, so when we start the game, we set this number to 0, which is less than 3. So that is not a valid size. So we start it with an invalid number. And then we basically say, while we do not have a valid input, ask the player for an input and then save that as this variable. So start with an invalid input, check to see if you have a valid input, and if you don't, which you don't at the start, then ask the player for a new input. So if the player gives us a valid input, it'll be done. It'll check this again. This is a while loop, so it keeps running until you pass this. Until you fail this check. And once you fail this check, it stops running the loop and it just moves on. It goes below it. But while you pass this check, it keeps running. And this check basically says, is the number you specified out of range? And we start out of range. So while you're out of range, keep asking for a different input until you get one that's in range, and then continue. So first we put an invalid input. Then we say, is the input invalid? If it is, ask for a new input. And then it will just keep checking to see if the user inputted a valid input before it will move on. So the one thing I'll mention though is when you use the prompt and you say choose something, and the player will get to type what they want to respond, they can type a word. Like they don't. It doesn't have to be a number. And even if they do type a number, it will be treated not as a number, but it'll be treated like text. So if I added a number to it, it would turn into this and not 13, because it thinks of it as text and not a number. So I need to wrap around, once I get the input, I need to wrap it with a function called parse int. Parse is basically just, it means manipulate text, and int means integer. So if I put parse int around this, it's going to take that text and read it as a number, as an integer. So if I typed 3.1, it's going to read that as 3 because that's an integer. If I type cat, I'm actually not sure what parse int will say. It might say not a number, or it might say 0, I'm not sure. In any case, I don't think it's going to give us a number that's within the correct range. So it should keep prompting the user over and over again until they make a correct choice. Alright, then I will say console.log grid choice. Okay, so there's my program. I'm going to save that and flip over and press refresh. And now it says choose the grid size, because it started at 0 and that wasn't good enough, so then it asked me, what do I want? 100. Oh, it didn't take it. How about 50? Nope. How about negative 100? How about cat sauce? Okay, I don't know why cat sauce worked. So You know what? I'll fix that later. I really don't know why that worked. Let's just assume that the player is going to give us numbers. So if I type 12, it should be done. Actually, I want to see what it says. So let's go to the console and let me refresh. I'm going to type cat sauce and I get not a number. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my thing and I'm going to say while it's less than 3 or greater than 12 or good choice equals not a number. I think that'll work. It should ask. So let's see if that works. Happy dance. How do I get not a number? Let me look that up. JavaScript check if not a number. How do I... Stack Overflow, by the way, is a great site for... Oh, what a lovely firewall. Is nan. Okay. Is that... Oh, nice. Wonderful. So I just got to do or is nan. Let's try that. So or is nan grid choice. Okay, I'm going to try that. Dog. Okay, perfect. It won't take language. It won't take wrong numbers. It will take a number within range, and now I can see that it has accepted 5. So that's how that works. Okay, very good. So now I have a way to, once I get a valid input, I'm just going to call this dims. And now I could just keep using grid choice, but I'm going to go with, I'm just going to change the variable name to dimensions. So, you know, 5 by 5 or 6 by 6 or whatever. Okay, so now I want to make the field and the mask, and I want them to be grids with the dimensions, not 6 by 6 all the time, but whatever the user chooses. So once I have the dimensions of my grid, I want to create a grid. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to say let field equal an empty array. And then I'm going to say I want to create arrays of that size. And then I want to put that many of those arrays within field. So I'm going to say for let column equal 0. Oops. And then while column is less than the size of the dimensions, increase column by 1. So I'm going to make, so this will start at 0. Let's say I choose 3 for my dimension size. So it'll start at 0, and it'll do something. Then it'll go to 1, which is less than 3, so it'll do it again. Then it'll go to 2, which is less than 3, so it'll do it again. That's a third time. And then it'll go to 3, which is not less than 3, so it will stop. So it'll do 0, 1, 2, and then stop. And so it'll cycle through this for loop 3 times. So let's do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this for loop, and I'm going to put it in again. This has like auto indented for me, so everything's flush indented inside of that one. That's perfect. But I can't use the same variable, so I'm going to call this row. No, I'm going to call this for, I don't know, I. I'm going to put I here and I here. It doesn't really matter. So when I start one of these columns, I'm going to say let row equal an empty array. Okay, so for the number of dimensions I chose, I'm just going to say row.push, which means add to the row. What am I going to put here? I guess it's 0 for now. So I'm going to push a 0 into the row. And then once I finish adding all these zeros to the row, I'm then going to add the row to the field. And so let's say I chose 3. I'm going to do this thing 3 times, and then I will do this 3 times. So it's going to make an empty row. 3 times it's going to do this. It's going to make an empty row, add 3 zeros to it, and then put it in the field. It's going to do that 3 times. So there's going to be basically a 3 by 3. And if I chose 6, it would make a 6 by 6. So once we do that, let's say console.log field, and let's just make sure that's working like I'm intending. So I gotta save, flip over, refresh, let's say 5, and now I get an array, and if I look at it, I have 5 rows, 0 through 4, and if I click on each one, I see that they're all 0 in each row. So I have 5 rows of 5. Perfect. So I can now create this sort of data structure of any size based on my user's choice. So that's pretty good. Now I'm going to make the field, the mask as well. So let's make the mask. I don't know, I think it's okay to use the same row, but just in case, I'm going to make another one. And I'm going to add 1 row to the field and 1 row to the mask, just to be safe. Row 2 that pushes 0. Oops. Alright, and then mask.push row 2. Alright, so I should get 2 things now. One's called field, one's called mask. They're both going to be filled with zeros. So there we've got the beginning of our game. I guess in the next video I will build a way for us to visualize these things.